Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers on the broadcast today. With the debt limit raised again and the national debt going through the roof, we're joined by Professor Tom Cargill for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Retail's impact on Nevada's economy? Enormous. 8,600 businesses, large and small, employing 145,000 workers. And last fiscal year, retail paid tax on nearly $60 billion in sales. We're the Retail Association of Nevada. We support retail, we help it grow, and we mean business.
RANNV.org.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Safety is the #1 priority for the trucking industry. Over $7 billion a year is spent on technology like this electronic eye that will apply the brakes automatically. But the most important factor for safety is the truck driver. These hardworking men and women who safely move over 70% of our nation's freight and 94% of Nevada's. We thank you because trucks move America forward.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad on No Holds Barred Political Forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we are always delighted to welcome back to the program Thomas Cargill. He's an economist. Pleasure to have you here. I want to talk to you about the national debt. This number has gotten to the level that is, first of all, for anybody, is unbelievable. But here's the conundrum. Ever since I became aware of the national debt, everything I've read said that this is going to kill us. This debt is going to be the death of us. We're lining up this debt for our children and grandchildren. Well, those children and grandchildren are all grown, married, had their own kids, grandkids, and still nothing has happened. Obviously, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but nothing that is obvious that stops politicians from once again raising the debt ceiling, piling on more to the national debt, and now we have an agreement that's going to take us for another couple of years. I talked to Senator Reid about this a few months ago, and I said, what's the tipping point for where we start seeing the disaster that everybody has foreseen? And he said, we're already there. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I do think that the debt to GDP ratio is pretty high. It's getting up there. It's not as high as Japan and some other countries. But it is amazing how long countries can go with a lot of debt. And the cost comes in sort of subtle ways that are very hard to identify. And that's why politicians have a tendency to ignore it, see no evil, speak no evil, and so forth. It has to do with inefficiency that's behind the debt. That is, why is the government spending so much money? And we've been able to get away with it because we have an accommodating Federal Reserve System. And this idea that the Federal Reserve is independent is a myth. And it accommodates the government.
Didn't it just show that by doing a decrease in the interest rates?
I don't know if I would go that far, but it is very sensitive to what the politicians think. But more subtly, what the Federal Reserve does is it just buys a lot of government securities. And we've been able to get away with it because the Federal Reserve accommodates the deficit, and China and Japan have bought a lot of our debt. But there still are costs that are being felt on the economy, but they're very diverse and they're not easy to identify. And it has to do with, well, what is the money being spent on? And a lot of it is being spent on entitlements. A lot of it is being spent on foolishness, all sorts of social justice programs, and like Baltimore. the Obama fiscal stimulus gave Baltimore $1.8 billion. Nobody can tell you where it went. It certainly had no effect. And over the last 15, 20 years, Baltimore's probably been a recipient of $10 to $20 billion. Again, no effect. Things have gotten worse. So what we see, there's really two problems with the debt. The one that's immediate that we're feeling right now is the inefficiencies that permeate the economy that are behind the debt, the government spending, okay? And there is a longer run impact that's going to hit us, and it is a day of reckoning. At some point, it's not sustainable. Now, you know, economists have been saying this for a long period of time. However, keep in mind, the debt doubled under President Obama. That's recent history. We really have not operated with the huge level of debt for very long, so we don't know when that day is coming. Now, before the Obama presidency, the debt was an issue, but it went from it doubled.
But now, but to be nonpartisan and a little fairer here.
Well, it's not nonpartisan.
Well,
these are facts.
I'm not disputing your facts. But at the end of the Clinton administration, we were actually to the point of actually paying down the federal debt. I mean, the economy was in amazing shape, and then 9/11 hit, and we responded, and you know, between what happened in Afghanistan and then the war in Iraq, I mean, that's when we really started piling up the debt. I'm not saying that the Obama administration didn't pile up debt, but it started, it's been under both administrations, and at this point in time, as you look at, you know, any potential solutions, it ain't coming from the Democrats or the Republicans, because they're just, you know, co-joining to make it worse.
Absolutely with you. And my comment about Obama was, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
And he was a very fiscally irresponsible president. But the Republicans are fiscally irresponsible also. In fact, if you look at it, the growth of entitlement spending in the country, and that's the real source of the debt. The discretionary spending is important, but it's really small compared to entitlements.
Even compared to the military?
That's a small part of the total debt. If you plot out the growth of entitlement spending, the shocking factor is it's actually grown faster under Republican administrations than Democratic administrations.
And part of that would be Part D for the prescription medications that came under the Bush administration.
I mean, there's all sorts of interpretations as to what that means. The point is, we've got a large number of politicians that are fiscally irresponsible, period. And we've got a Federal Reserve System that is, the idea it's independent is a myth. It is very, very dependent on the political environment, and it has gotten itself into a situation, especially under the Obama administration, and it started at the end of Bush, where it adopted a policy of quantitative easing policy and purchased huge amounts of government securities. And its asset portfolio doubled, tripled within a very short period of time.
But when they sold that, and they've been selling off that portfolio.
They have been, but it's still very large. It's about $3.7 trillion.
Right, but as they were selling it off, weren't they making money from, example, the bailouts? That they were selling what the securities that they had purchased at a profit, not at a loss.
I'm not sure that's correct. It is true that the money that the Treasury loaned AIG and others was paid back, and money was earned on it. But that's
I guess that's what I'm referring to.
Yes, and that's true. And that's a real myth, you know, that people, the government bailed out all these bad players and that was a taxpayer expense. It was a temporary injection of liquidity to prevent something was even worse. And that money was paid back. So it's sort of a win-win on that one. But the Federal Reserve is different. It buys these bonds, which are marketable bonds, and holds them in its portfolio. And of course, the bigger that bond portfolio, the more liquidity it's put into the system. And then, well, how do you return to normal monetary policy? Well, you start selling off these bonds. But then when you do that, interest rates start to go up. And I think last year around December, the Federal Reserve was a little bit too aggressive in raising interest, and you saw the reaction in the stock market. But to get back to your point about where this debt problem started with under the Clinton administration, Clinton was actually not a very bad president in terms of fiscal responsibility.
Right.
I think he doesn't get a fair treatment in that regard.
Well, people have forgotten about him at this point.
Well, sure, and of course because of other issues. And the Democratic Party has changed. Bill Clinton, aside from the sex scandals, would not be admitted into the Democratic Party now. So yes, we did have 9/11, and that started a problem. But you also have to remember that's when the housing bubble started. Around 2002, for a variety of reasons, Democrats and Republicans decided to subsidize housing. And they did it in a number of different ways, and we ended up with a housing bubble that was historic in terms of 100 years worldwide. I mean, it put us right into the same map as what happened in Japan. And that bubble burst in early 2006, and that ushered in the Great Recession. And a lot of that debt accumulated during that period of time. So it was partly because of a very, very sudden collapse of the economy, the effort of government to offset that by spending, and then the Obama administration came in with a pretty aggressive social agenda. And that's where we're at now.
Right, but when you look at the housing crisis, I mean, the banks have to take a huge share of that responsibility. Marketplace, the NPR business program, interviewed all of the Fed chairmen and people that were in charge at the time of that crisis, and people from Countrywide, et cetera. And the old joke about all you need to do was fog up a mirror to get a loan was 101% correct. There was no check or balance on whether people could afford these mortgages or not. They were just given them, and it was rampant, and nobody paid a price for it, except the country.
The politicians didn't pay a price. The Federal Reserve didn't pay a price. And
the people that ran the banks, really, except for the ones that went out of business, they didn't pay a price
I
either.
disagree with you a lot that, yes, there were a lot of things that Countrywide, B of A did that were, in hindsight, really bad decisions to make.
And I think Catherine Cortez Masto would tell you that the state of Nevada got a lot of money from these banks in fines that they paid in these national settlements.
However, they were responding to incentives. Anybody will respond to an incentive, even to do something that's not so good in the long run. And those incentives came from Washington, D.C. They came in the form of 3 different ways. Incredibly accommodating monetary policy, lax regulatory oversight, and a tremendous push by both Democrats and Republicans to make homes affordable, especially for low-income to moderate-income families, to the point where we had liar loans, no due diligence done. And so I know Senator Reid and a lot of people want to blame the private sector, but the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. This crisis was manufactured in Washington, D.C., and if you want to assign percentages, I'd give it 60, 70%, 30% for the private sector.
So I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I'm just saying that the other players in this beyond government had no problem whatsoever being the people that received those liar loans and signed the paperwork and gave them back to the customers, knowing full well that they couldn't afford these mortgages and that they were going to go bad within a very short period of time. And they didn't care about the consequences because they were making too much money until the crash happened.
I agree, but the role of government regulation is to make sure that incentives to make a buck and focus on the short run doesn't expose the rest of the country to risk.
So in a nutshell, what you're saying is that the government shouldn't incentivize what appears to be the mafia.
That's right.
Okay, let's take a break. We have to make some money here, pay for the show, and we'll be right back with Tom Cargill after this.
Because of UMC,
I'm putting my free time to good use.
Because of UMC, she keeps me on my toes.
Because of UMC and this guy, I'm here.
UMC, the highest level of care in Nevada.
Hi, I'm Eric Robnett, owner of Home Energy Experts. Has this ever happened to you?
Honey, did you remember to turn down the thermostat?
Forgetting to set the temperature? Not fun. We can help. Our new smart thermostat keeps the temperature set for your comfort all by itself.
I'm feeling hot now.
To increase your comfort, go to homeenergyexperts.com for details. That's homeenergyexperts.com.
The signs and symptoms of cataracts can start out small with subtle changes in your vision. So don't wait. Be proactive and take your vision into your own hands. If you're experiencing the onset of cataracts or just have questions, contact your eye care professional or call Eye Care Associates of Nevada today. Dr. Hiss has years of experience specializing in the surgical correction of eye disorders and has completed over 84,000 vision correcting procedures. At Eye Care Associates of Nevada, we'll change the way you look at the world.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
Back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with the economist Thomas Cargill. So going back to the original premise here of this conversation, which was, the national debt. Do we see at a certain point the collapsing of our economy? Do we see the collapse of currency? Do we see the collapse of entitlements? I can't see where any politician could ever sign off on ending Social Security or Medicare or Veterans Administration, and those are the three biggies, correct, in terms of entitlements, or even trying to cut them back.
I don't think you'd have to be that draconian. And yes, there will be a day of reckoning. I mean, the Chinese, for example, are threatening to start selling debt, but they're not stupid, because if they sold it, then the value of their remaining debt falls. I mean, they're not going to do that. And what are they going to do? Invest their money in the ruble? Go, come on. But there are ways you could deal with it. We just don't have the leadership. I don't see it anywhere.
For example, what ways?
How do you do it? First of all, you have to have policies to stimulate economic growth. And that's a plus for...
We don't have that? I mean, interest rates are pretty close to zero.
The interest rates do not stimulate growth.
Okay, so what stimulates growth?
What I mean is reduce government regulation, allow...
This administration has done a pretty good job of that so far.
And you've seen the results. That's one pillar, is you can grow yourself out of some of the debt. You can't grow yourself out of all of it.
Do you inflate your way out of the debt?
No, that's the worst thing in the world. In fact, what's happening now, there are a small group of very, very liberal economists, progressives, who have come up with a term called modern monetary theory that sort of says that we don't really have to issue bonds, we just have to have the Federal Reserve print money. And I mean, this is just crazy, but it's actually starting to gain currency because we have a large...
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, that is pretty good, isn't it? We have politicians, they have grandiose plans to pay off the student debt, to offer free this, free that, and they know they can't sell all these bonds. So all of a sudden, modern monetary theory comes along, and it's sort of like an aphrodisiac to these politicians. You'd have to, so another pillar would be to make sure that the Federal Reserve has incentives not to accommodate government spending. And third is we need a different group of politicians that are a little bit more serious. I mean, we really, with all due respect, most Republicans and most Democrats are a bunch of clowns up there. They could care less about what happens down the line. They are, they're the elites.
All right, and on that note, sir, let's take a break. We'll come back more with Thomas Cargill after this.
And
Dimitri Prine here for Design Outdoor. Come visit Design Outdoor's store and backyard to see our wide selection of fire pits, barbecues, and pizza ovens, natural stone water features and fountains, and frost-proof pottery. Our store and backyard are located at 11600 South Virginia, just north of DeMonte Ranch Parkway. Visit designoutdoor.com or call us at 851-9499.
One of the most psychologically damaging things parents can do to children in divorce is disparage one another, which is why I can't believe I even have to make this commercial. Half of your kids' genetics come from this person you're spewing hate about. Your children have the right to love you both, but more than that, they deserve to love themselves.
Marilyn York might be a men's rights divorce attorney, but this is for every selfish parent. Shut up!
Hi, I'm Dave Newman. Remember me? I used to be the house detective, and now I'm a realtor, full-time at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates. A lot of people ask me, how's the market? You know what? It's fantastic. If you're even kicking around the idea of buying or selling, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Call me at RE/MAX Realty Affiliates and just ask for the guy who used to be the house detective, Dave Newman.
Everyone is talking about opioids, but they're not the only drugs that can be harmful if taken in large quantities or not as prescribed. You also need to be aware of side effects from anxiety drugs, muscle relaxants, sleep aids, and stimulants. Mixing prescription drugs with other drugs or alcohol can be dangerous. If you take Ambien with a glass of wine, it may be enough to stop you from breathing. Prescribed drugs can be just as dangerous as illegal drugs. Take medications only as directed.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with economist Thomas Cargill. So there's one more element to reducing the debt.
Yeah, you mentioned about nobody's going to vote out Social Security. I agree. Social Security, Medicare are here to stay. But there can be marginal changes that are probably politically difficult to make that would dramatically improve the health of the system over the coming decades. And one would be raising the retirement age. And,
and you say this as a retiree.
Yes, that's right. That's fine. Well, I didn't take out Social Security until I was 71.
Yeah.
And some people would say I'm still working. But the point is, and you could make Medicare, there's tremendous fraud in the system. You could make Medicare more market sensitive. The worst thing in the world is to expand Obamacare, to create a public option. I guarantee you it will not deliver the results that are being promised, and it will add to the debt.
And Medicare for all is insane.
Oh, that's a pipe dream. I pray to God that this country doesn't really go down that line.
Well, and the biggest reason, and I'm on Medicare, and I think it's fantastic in terms of the benefits it provides me, but I paid into it for 40 plus years before I was eligible to receive it. And I think that's the problem here, is that you can't convert it to Medicare for all when people don't have any skin in the game. I also think that there are two things that the medical profession should fess up to, which is that a large number of people who go to see their doctors are lonely or hypochondriacs, and you need to have a charge in there to stop people from just utilizing facilities when there is no medical need.
I agree. Yeah, and as part of reforming Social Security and Medicare, the whole healthcare system needs to be reformed along market lines. Not more government control.
We've got about a minute and a half. Not enough time, but I want to ask you about it anyway. With the interest rates so low, no encouragement for people to save, and senior citizens totally screwed on the money they saved that they were hoping for their retirement, they're now eating into their savings rather than living off the interest.
It's a real mess.
Aren't we heading into what will become, over the next decade, the worst crisis this country will have seen?
Well, worst is a subjective.
Well, I'm talking about the people are going to commit suicide because they don't have the money. They're not going to take medications, or they're going to split the pills in halves or quarters. They're not going to have money for food. They're not going to have a place to live because they can't afford to pay the rent or their mortgage. I mean, this is a terrible thing.
It is. And life expectancy for males is actually declining for the first time. It's astounding. And I think that the Federal Reserve, with its low interest rate policy, did great damage to the country because seniors want interest income off of their portfolios.
They need it.
And they can't get it. And that's why they're eating into it now. And then now you've got a whole group of population coming along, or politicians, that want to write off all the student debt. That is the most irresponsible thing. And, you know, you can imagine all the inequities that will create. But we are creating a real problem, and a lot of these policies have the impact of increasing the income inequality. We've got very, very well-off people that have done very, very well, but a great many people were damaged by the Great Recession.
Okay, we're out of time,
okay.
But I will tell you, I think that the phrase income inequality is a great political slogan. The reality is that back in the day, Andrew Carnegie and others were very wealthy in this country for their time. Maybe not as many as we have now, but anyway, topic for another day. Thomas Cargill, thank you so much. Always enjoy you being here.
I thought you were going to talk about eugenics.
Not today. We'll be right back. A bird's eye captures its surroundings at different heights. At Brian Culpa Photography, we can make your imagination soar over buildings, parks, cityscapes, and beyond. Brian's images tell the story and get the job done. If you need a new perspective to tell your story, contact Brian today. Brian Culpa Photography. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hey, Dad? Why are you learning? This place is great. Huh? You gotta try this.
Wow, this stuff is great. People are gonna love it.
Yes. Yes, they will.
St. Ives Florist, for every holiday and every special occasion. For romance. Custom home design. We have the largest selection of fresh flowers in northern Nevada. And we also offer a large selection of unique gift items. Come see me, Lori Ann, at St. Ives Florist, 700 South Wells Avenue, or call me at 333-9190.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
You can now watch Nevada Newsmakers on YouTube. Subscribe to our Nevada Newsmakers channel. We'll see you on the next broadcast.